The piano stood in the corner of the apartment, half turned toward the open window as if it too leaned outward, listening to the city below, a soft murmur of distant traffic, footsteps on wet stone, the occasional clink of glass from the cafe across the street. The room was modest, dimly lit even during the day, but in the evenings it came alive in another way, not with noise or movement, but with the weight of something felt and never spoken. He played at night. Not every night, just enough that it became a rhythm, not regular like a clock, but consistent like breath. Always after the sun had disappeared behind the rooftops, when the sky lost its color and became a kind of quiet. He would open the window, just slightly, enough for the air to carry the sound, and begin not with scales or structure, but with a few soft notes, as if testing whether silence still lived there, before letting it unfold into music. She lived across the street. Not directly opposite, but close enough that his window aligned with hers, if both were open, and the curtains drawn back. But hers never were. Her lights were always off by the time the first note reached her wall, and though she never moved toward the glass, never stepped into view, she always sat nearby, just beyond the reach of lamp or street light, listening. She didn't know his name. Didn't know if he played from memory or from longing. The melodies changed, some familiar, others drifting like water over stone, slow and unhurried, with spaces between phrases that allowed the night to breathe. But there was something in the way he played that made her pause whatever she was doing, a book left open, a mug cooling in her hands, a thought unfinished, as if the music asked her not for attention, but simply for stillness. The window had been open for months now, even when the air grew cooler, even when the wind carried the bite of rain or the hush of snow. He played through it all, not every day, but with enough certainty that she began to mark her evenings not by time or weather, but by whether or not the music came. She never saw him. Only the light in his apartment, warm, low, sometimes flickering like candlelight, sometimes steady like a lamp left on for company. Once, she thought she caught a glimpse of his silhouette, shoulders slightly hunched, head bowed not in performance but in conversation with the keys. But she didn't move closer to the window. That was not the shape of this. And yet, over time, it became more than habit. she began turning off her lights earlier. Not in anticipation, not quite, but with a kind of silent readiness, as one makes room for something without admitting that they're waiting. She'd sit near the window, not facing it, not watching, just present, as if the darkness made her listening more honest, more complete. There was never applause. No acknowledgement. Only the quiet that followed, the moment when the music stopped, and the city held its breath for one more measure, before exhaling again into the ordinary. And in that space, in the pause between the final note and the closing of the window, she felt something like connection, though nothing had passed between them but sound and silence. He did not know she listened. Or perhaps he did. Perhaps that was why he never played too loudly, why the window always opened just enough, why the music carried not like a performance, but like a message meant only for the walls that knew how to hold it. And she, in her unlit room, never reached for more. She listened. That was enough. The nights grew longer as winter settled over the city, stretching shadows across windows and softening the edges of everything the light once made sharp. In her apartment, the cold crept quietly through the floorboards and into her slippers, but she never lit the lamps, not during those hours. She preferred the dark, the way it allowed her to feel without being seen, the way it gave permission to simply be near something without needing to reach for it. He still played. Not every evening, and not always for long, but when the music came, it came gently, with the same restraint, the same pauses between notes that had always felt like breaths held just before speaking, though the words never arrived. And she, wrapped in a blanket that had begun to carry the faintest scent of candle wax and the fabric of silence, would sit, unmoving, eyes half closed, waiting not for melody, but for the space that held it. Some nights, he started late, almost at the edge of sleep. She would already be lying down, half drifting, and then the sound would rise, barely audible at first, as if climbing through the stillness with care, as though the keys themselves were reluctant to disturb the dark. And she would turn her head slightly toward the window, her hand resting on the pillow beside her, the space always left unfilled, and listen. It wasn't music for performance. It was music for memory. For grief, perhaps. Or devotion. There were pieces she recognized, Debussy, once, something like Satie on another night, but most of the time, it felt improvised, like he was searching for something he had lost long ago, not hoping to find it, only needing to remember how it had once felt in his hands. She never told anyone. It wasn't something that could be shared, not without breaking the thin, careful thread that had been strung between them, though no word had passed, no glance exchanged. And in that sacred non-space, she had come to live her evenings, not in fantasy, not in longing, but in the echo of something true and unnamed. One night in January, the music stopped mid-phrase. It had begun like always, soft, slow, deliberate, but halfway through a line she had heard many times before, the notes faltered, hung suspended, and then, nothing. No closing chord. No creak of the window. Just silence.